Hi, I'm Allie Hamilton, and I'm so happy to welcome you to the Come As You Are podcast. Every week, we'll be talking about some aspect of healing, usually around childhood wounds and complicated familial relationships. The topics will always coincide with my personal essay of the week, and this will be a place where we can take a deep dive together. I'm so thrilled you've joined me and delighted for you to always come as you are. Hi there. Hi there. Welcome to our talk. Today, the topic is no mud, no lotus. And that is a phrase that I heard for the first time when I was 20 years old in a yoga class. And I had only been practicing for a few months at that point. And it was one of those phrases that just really is kind of like a lightning bolt kind of moment. I remember very well, I was in plank pose. We were holding plank, and the teacher just said it really casually. Shaking is fine, keep breathing. No mud, no lotus, and everyone around me laughed. And I was one of the younger people in the room. And I just remember, thinking like, wow, these people have heard this before and they're chuckling. But for me, this is like, bam, new information. And this whole idea of, your roots can grow in muck and mud at the bottom of like the darkest, murkiest pond or river, and still you can emerge, right? You can come up out of that and rise up out of all of that darkness and mud as this gorgeous, strong, beautiful lotus flower. And that idea that your past does not determine your future just really took hold of me in that moment. It was something that then I think I took hold of that idea. And, when you are, I think, young that way, but even when you're not, just when you're struggling, sometimes hearing something at the right moment, and I'm sure we've all had those experiences, it can be that thing, that little glimmer of light or hope that gives you something to hold on to, or a new way of thinking about things, and it's just enough. And I really remember walking home from that class and thinking like, wow, and of course, when you're 20, you have all kinds of ideas about things, right? About yourself, about the world, about how things work. And then obviously you get out there and you grow and you learn, and hopefully your perspective changes. But I do remember thinking at that time that I was broken, that there was something at my core that was broken, and that maybe from the outside things might look a particular way, but like there was something about me that was unlovable, or because I had come out of such a painful experience with my mom, which was ongoing. There's a lot of things from my childhood, my dad and all of his like rampant womanizing and all of the lessons that I learned from him about what a woman's worth is about, and the culture, just all of it. So there's a lot of unlearning to do, but also a lot of feeling that like there was something about me that was going to make it really hard to find happiness. And I was already struggling with, society's sort of messages about all that stuff. Like, okay, I'm supposed to starve myself and make everything on the outside look good. And I'm supposed to go to, a really good school and get good grades and grab all these brass rings and find the right person, and then I'll be happy. And even at 20, I was already like, I don't know. This doesn't seem to be I'm not sure this is a good formula because I had skipped my senior year of high school. I went to Columbia. I was still there at the time that I was in this yoga class. Um, I was doing all the things that I was supposed to do, getting those straight A's and all of that, shrinking myself, barely eating, like doing everything and just still not feeling any sense that I was going to find happiness this way. And I had also had an experience like that a couple of years prior in an Al Anon meeting. Somebody very sort of casually said, he was telling a story about something that had happened in interaction with someone and said, well, you don't go to the hardware store for apples. And everyone laughed. And I had another one of those moments of like, oh, I do that. I go to the hardware store for apples all the time. I'm going to the wrong people for empathy. I think if I write like the perfect email, my mom is going to see the light. Or, if I say the exact right thing to this person I'm in a relationship with, things are finally going to turn around. I just need to say it the right way. Or if I dance like a monkey, or I bend over backwards, or I'm perfect, then this person will love me. I keep going to the hardware store for apples. And it's just, you may have those things in your life too that you can look back on, things that you read or things that you heard. Over the years, I've been practicing yoga now for 34 years, teaching for like 30, and meditating for that time as well. And, sometimes somebody who has taken my class for years will come up to me after and be like, oh my God, that thing that you said today, it's just like, it was unbelievable. It really, it hit me. It was, I can't believe it. It was like, and I'm like, oh, what was it? And it'll be a thing that I say regularly, that I know this person, I've said it while they're in class before, but sometimes it's just like you hear something in that right moment. You're ready for it. We've all had that. So, certainly that was part of what I was writing about, but all of this was on my mind, the no mud, no lotus idea, because we've all had these struggles in our lives, right? Like, you don't get the lotus without the mud. Most of us, if you have found some measure of peace in your life, some sense of like feeling at ease inside your own skin, right? It probably came at a cost. You probably went through some things in your life and made some choices along the way where it was like, okay, no, this is not it, in order to figure out what was it. That's how most of us learn, right? We go one way and we realize, oh, this path leads to a lot of pain and heartache. And so maybe you have to take that path a number of times before you're like, yeah, I'm going to find a different route. This is not fun. And maybe you get it quickly. And I think a lot of that has to do with the way you feel about yourself and the, kind of support you have in your life and the messages that you received as you were growing up and the way that you were loved or, made to feel like your feelings mattered or not, right? And, some of it is family of origin stuff and some of it is just the culture that you grew up in and the messages that were like in the water that you were swimming in. And for most of us, especially for girls and women in this culture and in this society, there are messages all the time about what our value is, what our worth is. And I was watching White Lotus this season, and I'm not going to spend if you're not a person who watches, don't worry, you don't need to have watched it to understand what we're talking about or what I was writing about this week. But you know, there's so much going on in the United States right now. And obviously, I've been talking about that and writing about it. And you wake up here and there's just a lot. It's a lot. It's painful. And I am immersed in that. Like I wake up and, you know, when you talk about things being in the water, right, or in the air or just in the environment around you, that's how it is right now. And I wake up with that feeling. I get out of bed and there is sort of like this crackling anxiety that is in the air. And it is not that I wake up and I'm thinking about the way democracy's on fire or these specific cases that are happening, you know, violation of due process. It's not, I don't wake up instantly having these concrete thoughts about different things that are happening, the SAVE Act, or, you know, how hard two women had to fight in order to get new parents the ability to vote remotely if they had infants, you know, in the Senate. Like senators had to fight, two moms, bipartisan, had to fight the Speaker of the House in order to enable brand new parents, and of course it's going to impact moms more, to be able to vote remotely. He did not want to allow that, which is like, why? Why would you fight so hard to shut that down? It's just whatever. So it's not like I wake up in the morning and I step out of, you know, I get out of bed and that's what it's just that there is this dread and panic that is permeating, that's underneath it's like, it feels like it's underneath the floorboards or it's seeping through the walls or it's just in the air everywhere right now. And so that's not like me. You know, I am, generally speaking, a really pretty optimistic person. I tend to be a glass half full kind of gal, and I'm pretty steady. And some of that is 34 years of yoga, and some of it's just my nature. Like I tend to think the best of people until I have a reason not to. I tend to think everything's going to be okay. I just, you know, tend to be pretty steady and optimistic by default. It's like my general, you know, my general nature. But these are not normal times. And I am at that point in my life where I'm really looking at what is happening here in this country and my heart's broken. Like many of us, and like all of the close women in my life, every woman I'm close to in my life feels the way that I do. I don't really think I could be close to a woman who didn't share my feelings about this, because it isn't a political issue at this point. It's like a moral, ethical, philosophical issue about, you know, the way that you feel people should be treated and the way you feel the planet should be treated, just the way that you feel, you know, how we do, right? Like how we want people in our society to be treated, period. And already before this, Matt, it wasn't, by my way of thinking, the safety net was not, there were too many people already on the fringes, you know, not being supported by that safety net. And now it's just, I'm so devastated. There are so many people I care about who are scared and trying to figure out how to keep their friends safe, their neighbors safe, their family safe. And I'm one of them. I worry about how to how to keep people safe. And, I have a daughter here in this mess, and the way that just the things that are happening right now, I think what people are missing, a lot of people that support the current administration, I think what they're missing is that when you start to erode due process for one set of people, you are eroding due process for everyone. It's just a matter of time. It's a precedent that you are enabling. And there's a lot of enabling going on, and just a lot of madness, just a lot of chaos and tariffs, and our neighbors, like, Canada, Mexico, like our allies, like just the level of, I think shock, dismay, it's really disheartening. And, we have a man in a prison, a mega prison in El Salvador, that the government admits, like, it was a quote unquote clerical error. And the Supreme Court just unanimously was like, you have to, you got to get him back. You're admitting this was your mistake. You're admitting he has no criminal record. You're alleging, that he was a gang member. There's no proof. There's no evidence that you're offering here. You've just deported someone who was supposed to be protected from that. And you're owning that you've made that mistake. Go get him. And, but there's no deadline for that. I don't know who's going to enforce this, or like, it's just that's what we're all dealing with here, is just a lot of people just being pulled off the street. And I was writing about how I saw a post this week, this immigration attorney, she was like, listen, if you are a US citizen and you are detained by ICE, you need a civil rights attorney, not an immigration attorney. You're a US citizen. It's not an immigration attorney that you need. You need a civil rights attorney. And there were all these comments underneath the post from people who support this administration, and they were, full of vitriol. They were not kind. And they're like, why would ICE detain US citizens? This is so dumb. And because have you ever walked your dog and not brought your wallet with you and not been white? That's how. Have you ever gone to mail a letter and not brought your wallet with you and not been white? That's how. Like, you've got to, at a certain point, think about how things are for other people. It's not that far of a leap. You just got to take a second, like take a beat and ask yourself, why is this immigration attorney feeling the need to post this information? And how could that happen? That's how. It's not hard, And I ran into a friend of mine who is a doctor. I met him years ago at a silent meditation retreat. And he's Persian. His family of origin is Persian. He's an American citizen. He was born here. And I hadn't seen him for a long time. I met him back in 2001 or 2002. I went and did my first Vipassana, 12-day. It's a 10-day silent retreat, but the day you get there, the day you leave, it's 12 days. And you don't talk, you don't make eye contact, you don't speak to anyone. You literally you meditate from 4:00 in the morning till 9:00 at night, and you're taught a system, a technique. And he, at the end of it, the morning, when you do finally break your silence, we connected, we met, and it's just lovely. You could really not meet a nicer person. And I hadn't seen him for so long. When I came back from that sit back in 2001 or 2002, I was really sick. I got sick while I was there, and I came back to LA, and I was not getting better. And this was in my extreme, eat anything. Like I was extreme vegan, like no butter, no eggs, no honey, no nothing. Like just very, very all the way, as extreme as you can be about it. And also like I won't take medication. Like I just was really, trying to do everything without any kind of like medical intervention of any kind. But I started to at 104 temperature and I was like hallucinating. I mean, I was so sick. It's one of the times in my life where I've been the most unwell. And I finally was like, I don't know if I'm going to be okay. Like, I think I better go to the doctor. And I went to him. We had just met, only like a couple weeks before. And I went to his office and I was very much like, I just really want to try to ride this out. And he looked at me and he's like, listen, you have two choices, okay? It's either I'm going to put a giant shot of penicillin into each ass cheek right now, or I'm going to put you in the hospital. Those are the options. Like, you're not going to meditate your way out of this, and there isn't enough, echinacea in the world to get you through. You're not okay. So I took the penicillin. Anyway, he ended up being my doctor for years after that until insurance changed, and we all know how that goes, unfortunately. We have a healthcare system here and not actually like health care. But I ran into him a few weeks ago for the first time in so long, and it was great to see him at Time Cafe. And I've been thinking about thyme lately. It's not spelled that way. It's spelled thyme, like the herb, but I ran into him there. And we had a great conversation. I was there with another friend of mine who I was also writing about this week in the essay, one of my oldest, dearest friends, really more like a sister to me than a friend. We went to high school and college together. I have a few friends like that in my life, a few women friends, which is ultimately what I was writing about this week, and I'm getting there. And she was with me. And so we, they hit it off. She is the kind of person, and I talked about her before. She can be friends with anyone. Like, we can go out and she's just a very curious person, and she will talk to people. And before you know, she's like made friends with the person next to her, the person behind her. She's very outgoing. She asks questions. She wants to know things. And I love that about her. It's such a good quality. So they hit it off. So we were like having this conversation, and he told us in the course of the conversation that he's been carrying his passport around because his wife said to him, what are you going to do if you get pulled over and you have to prove your citizenship? How are you going to prove it? You know, and so couldn't answer her. So he's walking around with his passport all the time. This is an American citizen, and he's been a doctor, UCLA for years and years. And the man is walking around with his passport every day. This is like the world that we're in now. And this whole SAVE Act thing, you see people commenting, what's the big deal? Just get a passport. Look, first of all, passports cost money. Not everyone has expendable income. And why is it that a woman should have to go and spend money now in order to vote, but a man doesn't have to? Just stop and ask yourself that question for a second. That's like an election. That's like a voting tax. That's illegal. It shouldn't be harder for me to vote than my son or my brother. Like, why, how is that okay? For the people that are like, just get a passport. It's expensive. It's time consuming. And not everybody has that money or that time or the ability to get to the passport office. They're cutting back tons of government workers. So the wait times for these things are a lot longer. This is voter suppression, and it's aimed at women, and it is Project 2025. It's right in there. And I know because I read it. So, there's just a lot of stuff that is in the water every day. And it's exhausting. And so I wake up, and that's kind of like where things are at these days. I am the first sort of like 20 minutes that I'm up, I'm managing that feeling. I will say, after all these years of practicing, really sensitive. Like, I am aware of how I am feeling most of the time. When you have a sensation based practice and you've spent a lot of time working on that and being aware from moment to moment of how you're feeling, you're going to be attuned to that stuff. So when I wake up, I can feel it. I can feel that energy moving through my body. And it's not, for me, a pleasant way to start. This is not how I want to start the day, right? I don't want to wake up feeling that kind of like anxious energy first thing. But we don't get to choose the timeline, right? We're just living on it. So we got to kind of figure out, how can I live? How can I exist in this timeline, on this timeline, and show up with love, and show up with, how do I maintain my steadiness here? And so for me, it's like, all right, I'm going to get up. I have tools, right? I've been doing this a long time. I'm going to brush my teeth. I'm going to do what I need to do. I'm going to get out to the kitchen, and I'm going to make my coffee. That's like my ritual first thing. I'm going to grind the beans. I'm going to froth the oat milk. I'm going to like brew the coffee, and the smell of that and all those things, that's part of what grounds me. Again, a lot of sensation, smell, touch, taste, all of those things. And if you do feel like you're spinning, sensation is a really good place to go to ground yourself and bring yourself into the present. And so I know that I just like, okay, I'm just going to ease my way into the day. And when I have my druthers, that's how it goes. I'll make my coffee, and then I'll sit down and I'll read for a while. It doesn't always go like that. Sometimes I have things that I need to do. I have appointments, or, I have clients, or I have things that need to happen. I have a Zoom call, or I have something I have to go and film, or like whatever it is. But if I can, I'm going to start the day with coffee, and then I'm going to read. And I do not start the day with news. And I would highly recommend, if you're struggling with anxiety or, just calming your nervous system, don't start the day with news, right? If you like to read essays, poems, if you're reading a novel or like a non-fiction, like anything that's going to soothe you. For me personally, good sentences swirling around my mind, like settling into my heart, like that's good stuff for me. That's good medicine, along with the hot coffee. And I'm somebody who I've really, really low blood pressure. And I actually did write about it in the essay, but it ended up on the cutting room floor, so to speak. It's another thing that's been going on for me lately, is everything is taking longer than usual, and the level of effort required is greater than usual. And I'm certainly feeling that with my writing, not with the memoir so much, but with the essays. They're taking longer than usual, and I'm sweating it a lot more. And they're not coming easily, and that's okay. No mud, no lotus, right? Like, I will sit there and work through the mud. But it's tiring, and my level of anxiety with that too. I'm like, I don't want to put something out there if it's not of value, I'd like rather be quiet than put something out there if it's not gonna, if there's not gonna be something in it that has value, or that might be comforting or helpful or interesting or funny or something. I'd rather be quiet than just add to the noise. I have no interest in that. So, I really want to make sure every week, whatever I'm putting out there, is meeting a certain standard I have for myself, and a certain standard I have for anybody who's reading my stuff. Like I want it to reach a certain level. And it's been hard for me lately. Like I'm struggling with that. So I was working on this week's essay just as an example. I think I started on Monday. And you know what, my younger one is off. She's on spring break right now. And so the schedule's a little bit, funky. And so certain things, like certain blocks of time I would normally have, were like sort of interrupted, and that's all fine. But yeah, there were a few things along the way where I was like, oh, I'm going to have like a chunk of, and I was like, oh, no, I'm not. So that's part of it. But part of it was just like, it wasn't flowing. And I knew what I wanted to write about. And part of what I wanted to write about was this Carrie Coon, who is one of an incredible ensemble of actors who was in this season of White Lotus. She delivered this monologue in the finale, and people were going wild over this monologue. Now, she's amazing, and I love her, and she delivered the monologue beautifully, and the monologue itself was beautiful. However, after the week she just said, and these are fictional characters, okay? So let's be clear. But what really troubled me is like the whole internet swooned about like how amazing this, like, look, women, and this is such a great example of like these female friendships that we've had, with the women we've known for our whole lives. And like, this is what it looks like. Female friendships are so amazing. It's no, no, like after the week these women had together, and the way she in particular was treated by her two childhood besties, the monologue made no sense, okay? They did not treat her well. So you have three women, in case you don't, like I said, you don't watch the show, it's totally fine. You don't need to have watched it. You have three women, like in their mid-40s. They go on vacation together, and it is a very catty situation. There's a lot of gossiping going on, particularly with these two women who are, successful by some standards, but honestly, the third one was the one for me. I was like, she's the best of the bunch here by far. And there just was a lot of like talking behind her back, and Carrie Coon, her character. And she's like, whatever, divorced. She's got a teenage daughter. She's a high-powered corporate attorney. Anyway, the entire week, there's all this stuff going on where these other two women are talking behind her back about her drinking, about her divorce, about the fact that she didn't make partner, about her difficult teenager, about her, ex-husband and how he's leeching off of her, and now she has to pay him, spousal support, and like her bad choices. And I'm like, wow, okay. And then meanwhile, there's all these different storylines where like one of the women is a famous actress, and she's treated the other two women to this week away at this resort, and she's encouraging the Carrie Coon character, to hook up with the hot masseuse, and then the actress, goes and hooks up with him herself. There's just a whole bunch of stuff going on. So to get to the end of this week and then have this woman deliver a monologue that's like, you know what? And basically the monologue was, I was really sad all week because these other two women are talking about how great the week was and how much they love each other and how happy they are in their lives, which, by the way, really? Because like the actress can't reach her husband for days, her younger husband, and the implication is he's probably off with somebody, and you're not going to tell your two best friends that you can't reach your husband? What kind of friendship is that? Because of appearances, you're not going to confide in your two childhood best friends. I have not been able to reach my husband for the last 3 or 4 days. He's not returning my texts. In a real life scenario, which again, this isn't, you would absolutely tell your friends, and your best friends would be contacting their partners, their roommates, their people. You would have people at home driving over to the house to find out, first of all, is the husband dead? Is he okay? If he's okay, is he holed up with someone else? If he's holed up with someone else, all hell's about to break loose. That's ride or die, people. It's not that you're not going to tell your best friends. That's not how it goes. I mean, there's just so many things. It doesn't matter because, again, this is fiction. What mattered to me is the response, is all these people saying, oh, this monologue was so amazing and female friendship, woo. Like, if those are your friends, if your female friends are talking behind your back and like undermining you and like telling you to go have some fun, go like cut loose for a little while, you deserve this, and then like doing it and then not taking any accountability and not being able to apologize or not being able to look you in the eye and say, yeah, I understand why you feel like that doesn't feel good. These are not friendships that you're going to celebrate, okay? This is not a good example of women having each other's backs. And so I think where we are right now at this sort of like inflection point in time is I feel it is really important to call things what they are. So if you're going to say something's amazing, make sure it's amazing. If you're going to, celebrate female friendship, make sure it's a good example of female friendship. If you're going to deliver, if you're going to celebrate this and again, this is like, who cares? It's a TV show. It doesn't matter. It's escapism. It's whatever. But it matters when it's in the collective, when people are like all talking about it and like sharing and all that stuff, when it's becoming part of that conversation, then it does matter because you're kind of like, time out, everyone. This is not a good example of how women support each other. And I have been really incredibly lucky in my life. And I don't know how much of it is luck, actually, because I started to write about, my relationship with my mom, which I have written about a lot, and I'm writing an entire memoir about. That's kind of the heart of the memoir. It's got a lot of other tentacles that are, that reach out from that sort of central idea and relationship. But my relationship with my mom was really complicated. And she broke my heart a lot. And, she did it. She was really, unfortunately, when she would get angry, she had a lot of rage. She had a lot of other great qualities too. And it is hard sometimes when I'm writing just an essay. It's hard because I don't want to just give a snapshot. The relationship was so complicated and layered, and my mother was not one thing. She was not just an alcoholic, and she was not just somebody who had a lot of rage or a lot of trauma or a lot of loss. She also was incredibly smart and funny and a force. She'd walk into a room and you would not miss the fact that she'd walked into the room. She'd be incredibly kind and generous. There's always a couch for anybody in her life who fell on hard times. But she was an alcoholic. She would not get help. And unfortunately, she turned a lot of her rage, I would say most of it, toward me, her daughter. I think partly because she knew I wouldn't share it. She had trained me and taught me we don't air our dirty laundry. And I think also she felt in this world that girls and women get thrown to the wolves. So if that was going to happen, she was going to throw me there first. It's a little bit like it's a sink or swim kind of situation. And if there's going to be blood in the water, then I'm going to do the cutting, that kind of thing. And your mind to cut, a little bit like that. She was the kind of person, if somebody else cut me, forget it. She'd get right there and she would breathe fire on you. But, but she would go for my jugular herself. So it's just a complicated relationship. And I think I learned over the years not to confide in her, because it was only a matter of time before she would drink and then, share something or throw something in my face that I had confided to her in a moment of vulnerability that would just be devastating, just be such a betrayal. She would, when I was a kid, she would come after me, not just verbally, physically. It was scary. And it did make me feel like I'm doing something wrong as a kid. You don't have any other way to interpret that. You just, all you can think is I'm doing something to upset her. I'm not living up to something here. I'm getting something wrong. So I would try harder to be better. And I was already like doing everything I could possibly think of. I was getting the straight A's. I was starving myself. I was taking care of my little brother. I was keeping the house clean. I was like doing everything I could possibly think of, and it still wasn't enough. So you start getting this feeling of like, it's me, no matter what I do, it's not enough. And so it must be like something in me that is lacking and making her this enraged. You just don't have any other way to process it when you're a kid. And so my female friendships became, I think, really important to me. I had a longing for that kind of energy, that kind of support that is very different in feeling. And anyone who has close female friendships knows what I'm talking about. It's very different. And I, even as a kid, really longed for that. And I would get very attached to my girlfriends, and I had a best friend growing up, and I was so attached to her, probably too attached to her. When our elementary school was over and it was time to go to like middle school, high school, I followed her to this school that probably was not the right school for me. And you know how the story goes, like we were there together for a year, and she first year like went off and found other friends, and I was like, womp womp. But as I grew, those relationships I have always cherished and treasured my girlfriends. And I think that I've been a slow burn kind of person with my girlfriends. Like it takes me time, probably because of that history with my mom. I'm open. Obviously, even just sitting here having these conversations, I'm a pretty open book. But as far as like really getting to a place with somebody where I'm so open and so vulnerable they could hurt me, that I don't do very often with anyone of any gender. Like I'm very, very slow for that stuff. And that's part of what happens when you grow up with a lot of trauma is you learn. You're like, not going to put myself in that kind of situation where I'm relying on somebody or making myself, like I need to take care of myself. So it takes me a long time to feel like, here's my jugular, like I don't do that quickly at all. However, with the women that I have in my life, some of them I have known since elementary school. And I have women in my life I've known since high school, women I went to college. I have women in my life who are more like my sisters than friends. And with a handful of these women, I can say anything. And I mean anything I can share any struggle, any crazy thing I'm going through, anything. And I know that I am safe, that it isn't going any further. And the same is true in reverse. It's like, you know, you got to have some people like that in your life where you can say, wow, I am having thoughts that I did not expect. I am having feelings. I don't know what to do with these feelings. I don't know where to put them. I did not see this coming. I mean, you know, if I were to pursue this, my entire life would be turned inside out. Like, what? You've got to have some people in your life where you can be absolutely like real and truthful, you know, and also people who are going to say to you, what are you doing right now? What is happening with you right now? You know, like these choices that you're making or the stuff that you're doing, I'm really worried about you. And you are not like living up to, you're disappointing yourself right now. You know, you want to have people like that in your life who you can trust to tell you the truth and who you love enough to speak the truth, you know? Like you're supporting 100%. And also like if they need a little, hey, now, I don't really think this is the best you can do. Like you can have all kinds of feelings and we can talk about your feelings all for as long as you want. I'm here, but your actions right now are not cool. Like you've got to have some people in your life where you can be having those real conversations. And that's not, you know, not to go back to whatever, who cares, the TV show, but like that's not what that was. It just, you know, so that's why I was like, we're not going to celebrate that. That is not a good example of lifelong friendship between women. That ain't it, folks. Okay. It's worth celebrating, but don't say that is what it looks like, because that's not what it looks like. It looks like having real conversations, and it looks like being able to say, I'm really sorry that I hurt you. You know, that was crappy of me to do. I was super selfish. Like I wasn't thinking about how that would make you feel. Like, I'm so sorry. You know, that's what a real, like genuine sisterhood looks like between women. It's not the crap that was. And then, you know, then somehow you get to this monologue. That monologue is what happens with real, like women showing up for each other. So it just bothered me. And I think there's so much out there right now where we are, you know, you see something and you're like, that's not okay. And then someone's like, this is great. And you're like, this is not great. What are you talking about? This is absolutely not great. So I think my tolerance for, you know, misnomers right now is like zero. It's like, let's not do that. Let's be really careful about what we're saying and doing and what we're calling things and what we're celebrating. And I think we really do need our friends right now more than ever. It's one of the things sometimes in the morning when I'm sitting and I'm having that like easing into the day. And obviously for me, after I read, you know, and I've calmed my nervous system and had my coffee, and I was starting to say that I have very low blood pressure. In fact, like it's gotten to the point where when I go to the doctor for any reason, the nurse always takes my blood pressure twice because they're like, they don't believe the first reading. The last time I had my blood pressure taken, it was like 88/43, something. And even for me, that was like super low. And the nurse was, you know, alarmed. But I'm used to this. It's always low like that. And if it's low and you don't have any symptoms and you're fine, some people just have low blood pressure. It's probably 34 years of yoga. You know, I have low blood pressure, and so that's how it is. But she was like, "Are you okay? Are you feeling like?" And I said, "Am I alive?" And she like did not laugh. And I thought it was funny, but she did not laugh. So part of that is my hands and feet and nose sometimes are really, really cold. Because when you have low blood pressure, like you can, right? You can understand it's the blood that is being pumped is going to like go toward your major organs. And so sometimes your extremities are like just freezing. And so that hot coffee, part of it is like I warm up my hands, and I always have like socks, like fuzzy socks. My dog used to curl up on my feet in the morning. So I'd like have my coffee in my hands and my dog at my feet, and I'd read. And that was like a really my ideal way to kind of ease into the day. It's hard. I miss him like a lot. His absence is deeply felt. And, I think that in these, when times are tough, that's the stuff, right? You're trying to figure out what is it that I need to sort of get through? Like, what are the things that are going to help me? And, I don't get to have him now, which is painful. And I've had a lot of loss since the end of 2021 when my mom died, which was honestly, it knocked me completely sideways for a year. I just was just barely keeping my head above water, and it's still painful. And very, it's like right under the surface for me all the time, where if I talk about it, I'm instantly like this. And then my dad in 2023, and my half sister like in the middle of that in 2022, and my dog, like it's been a lot. And then we had, of course, the fires, and it's just, it's been a lot of just feeling very like, okay, this is not, if I can't look to the ground underneath me to be solid, I have to find the grounding inside myself. And so sometimes when I'm sitting there and I'm reading, I'm having my coffee, that's when like sometimes I'll get a text from one of my gals, right? Like, how you doing? Or I'll send a text, right? How's your heart? Like, how you doing today? You good? Like, lunch this week? Whatever. We need each other. Somebody wrote in one of the comments under the essay this week that the women in her life are like the stars that help her navigate. It's just like, they're such important relationships. And I think it felt really important for me to call that out and acknowledge them properly. Even though, I don't think anyone is looking to Mike White or White Lotus to teach them about female friendships. It just troubled me. Like, that's all. Just as much as I love Carrie Coon and she's incredible, I was like, you just time out for a second. Let's just talk about what genuine female friendship looks like, because it's so much more beautiful and incredible and deep and real than that. It's people really having your back, and it's having the hard conversations, not dropping them because you don't want like the vacation to get awkward or because the conversation's too painful. That's not what it is at all. It's the people that you can have those conversations with, and that have seen you at your worst, like, and stayed in there with you. So you don't get to have the incredible relationships if you can't go there with people. They don't sustain. And it isn't because you gloss things over. That is not it. Glossing things over doesn't get you anywhere in life. We all know this, right? So I hope this is helpful. It took me, I came back, I went to the cardiologist yesterday because a year ago, I had chest pain that I felt during a meditation. I was like, wow, I feel pressure in my chest. What is happening? And it went on the whole day, and it was scary enough that I'm like, okay, I am not going to mess around. Like, I Googled, what does a heart attack feel like in women? Like, I mean, so went to urgent care, I went to the ER, and they did like an EKG, they did all this stuff, and they did a scan. And it turned out I had a, like pericarditis, little bit of fluid around the heart. And I had had what I thought was a cold a couple months before, and the doctor at the ER was like, "You probably had COVID, and you have a little bit of fluid around the heart. It's a thing." So anyway, it went away on its own. But that's part of it. It was very mild. It was very, very mild. But it's been a year. So I went back in yesterday. Heart's in great shape. I spoke to one of my super close girlfriends on the way there. She's got her own like things. Like, we're all in the middle years, when you hit, like, I'm 54, you start to, like, you got to stay on top of your stuff. You've got to stay on top of your health and pay attention. And if you feel things that are weird, you have to advocate for yourself sometimes. So she was going through, since we were having that conversation and kind of laughing. Anyway, heart's great. It's in great shape. It's broken. Got a broken heart, but it's healthy. And while I was there, it's like, oh, I got a titer test for measles, because if you are born after 1968, they are recommending that you check to make sure. You might need a booster. So I did that while I was there. I don't have the results yet, but just throwing that out there too. One of my friends I was writing about in the essay, another one that I went to high school and college with, we went to the protest last week in Los Angeles together. While we were there, she's like, oh, I went and got a titer test and I needed a booster for measles. And she's like, you were right. And I was like, I was right. She's like, yeah, you told me to go get. I was like, I told you. I didn't even remember that I told her to do that. And then I remembered, oh yeah, I put it in an essay like weeks ago and I never did it. So I did it yesterday. But she needed one, and we are born 3 days apart. So it's a thing. So maybe get yourself checked, because we're in crazy times. And, in crazy times, you need to advocate for yourself, for your friends, for your neighbors, for your daughters. And, we just got to stay in this thing together and know who your friends are. Okay. And if you need help, you know where I am. And, I'm sending you a lot of love until next time.